this case, we're going to say, we're assuming, because we've told you, we think that the growth is going to be real. Okay, all I'm saying is that you are running some risk when you do that because, owners are always giving us projections and they don't always pan out.
How are you mitigating your risk here? What structure decision are you thinking about in your mind? Yeah, and why does that mitigate that risk of growth not happening? Yeah. They don't come, right. But what are you giving up? What's the bank giving up? It's more expensive. What else? Expensive monitoring. What else? One more thing that we learned about from Todd. The cost of capital. If we're committing something to somebody that we don't think they can use, it's still costing. So this is a good way to balance it, but you got to think through all the components.
Because if this company did not grow and you lent off of 1.2 million and you allowed for 15% ineligibles, 80% advance rate, you're talking about an AR line basically of $800,000.
But you're mitigating your risk here with your structure.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. There's also considerations, things called over advances. That's where it's true that on an AR line, the beauty is that their borrowing base is going to fluctuate. The problem is if they have a spike, and you have a commitment at a certain level, let's say pretty high level, and they spike and they borrow on it, and then their seasonal and their ARs drop, and they didn't pay you back when they collected those ARs. The next month, the borrowing base is calculated because the ARs have dropped considerably. All of a sudden, they're only qualifying for, let's say, $300,000 below what they owe you, and they don't have the money to pay you down because they use it for something else. That's an over-advance situation. Yeah. Yeah, and we're not like the RCBO where we're like every single invoice, we're on top of it. And when they get payments from those customers, we're on top of it, paying ourselves off. So, long story short though, in this case, $1,088,000 is the borrowing base based off projections, yet they need a note payable of $1,007,000. So is our $1,088,000 going to help this individual achieve the goal of taking advantage of all the discounts, the 2% discounts? Okay? We don't have the collateral to support it. Okay? We do not have the collateral to support a note of that amount. Okay? So why don't you take out we passed out some financing gap worksheets here. Okay? Well, before we do that, one other thing. We have something that's real important to consider here. Funds flow coverage. Okay? When we underwrite an AR line, we have more to worry about than just collateral, correct? Okay? We need to have debt service. Okay? So let's talk about debt service. When we underwrite loans here, do we do a lot of projection lending on debt service? Okay? Because we're not projection lenders. Beyond that, why? Because sometimes they don't come to fruition. Okay? Now you guys are going to go back using that word all the time. Yeah, I mean, they may not be real. I mean, they may not achieve their projections. Okay? So in this particular case, let's look at the income statement, on that very next page. Okay, it's on the page after the historical balance sheets. So it says income statements for 97 net sales, 7.2 million, gross profit, $1,150,000. Everybody see that? Okay. It says page 407 at the bottom. Is everybody there? Okay. How much money? Now remember, again, one of the things we told you in this case is that Mr. Mays has net discretionary income of how much? $20,000 after what? After, if we were to cut out dividends basically and didn't allow him to take his dividends, okay, and left it in the company, he would still have NDI of 20. That's really important. Conversely, if we let those dividends continue to flow out, his NDI in 97 would have been 65 because the dividends paid was 45 plus his other NDI, so that would have been 65. So it's really 6 and 1/2 dozen the other. Okay? So the point is, though, how much funds flow do we have for the current year to support debt? Stacy? Okay, do you want to tell us how you got that? Just real quick. Okay, so profit after taxes was 90 grand, right? Interest expense was how much? 3 grand plus NDI 20 grand. So that's $113,000. Okay? We just finished saying that if we did an 80% advance on that $1,006,000 AR base, that's strictly based on the ARs alone, that the line of credit amount would be roughly $1.1 million, right? It was $1,088,000. Okay? So if we're lending at, what's a typical rate on an AR line? Let's say we'll talk about pricing a little bit. But let's just say, what do you want to give them? Let's just, for ease of argument here, let's just use 10%, so prime plus 2, since prime's at 8 today. Okay? Let's use 10%. Okay? So on $1.1 million AR line, you've got how much in debt service? Without using your calculator, on $1.1 million. $110,000 in debt service, and in the current year, 97, we had $113,000 in funds flow available. So what's our debt service coverage on that? Like 1.1 to 1, or yeah, 1 to 1. It's 1 to 1, okay? And in the prior year, we had funds flow of $98,000. So we don't even have 1 to 1 coverage. We're slightly below 1 to 1 coverage on a $1.1 million AR line using historical coverage, okay? Now, we've come to kind of a real critical part of the case because we're talking about historical lending, debt servicing off historical numbers versus projection lending, okay? We're talking about a new customer of the bank here, aren't we? Okay? How many of your SCOs would approve a $1 million line at 1 to 1 coverage historical for this customer? Okay. Besides Barry, I mean, we know how easy he is, but okay. Okay. So right now, based on historical coverages, what we have, they don't support the debt servicing capabilities to support a $1.1 million AR line based on historic. Okay? Now we do know that by giving this individual and the company a large line of credit, they're going to be able to take advantage of discounts. Quite honestly, that's something that you and your SCO would have to get very comfortable with. How do you monitor how they use their line? The customer says, I mean, is it fair? Is it really fair to go in and say, oh, well, gosh, 60% of the customers offer discounts, and do your calculations and just assume that this individual in the company is going to be able to take advantage of every single one of those discounts available and just add that back into funds flow? Especially when he historically has not, well, he hasn't had the credit line available to do so. Okay? He hasn't had the funds to do it. But why, just let's think this through. Why would you want to be real careful about how you approach that? Okay, Vic? Okay. No, there's no history. What about what other things can you use a line of credit for? What if Mr. Mays decides that because of the growth, he's outgrown his building, and he advances $300,000 on the line of credit as a down payment on a building down the street? Okay, is that taking advantage of discounts on inventory? No?
Yeah, he's so aggressive, he wants to build his business into a $50 million business. You don't know if he's going to buy inventory or what.
Okay. What if he went and misused it and bought equipment with some of it? So the point I'm making here is that I think you'd be in error, and this is an open forum, and there is no right answer to this case. Okay, we don't have a right answer. But the point is, I think you'd be really making a gross error to just assume, just adding back, X number of dollars in discounts, lowering his cost of goods sold, that therefore it goes directly to the bottom line, and trying to make the case of, hey, he supports a line of credit because of this add back of $1.8 million, let's say.
What are some circumstances under which you could do that? Okay, so this gets back to the know your customer. So let's say you know this customer. Let's say this is an existing customer. We've had a lot of experience with him. We know this guy. We know he's got really good credit. This is a place where we can, on the flip side of this, we can also add some value. We can come back and say, look, here's how we can add value to your business, and here's how we can get you more money. But it's important to understand the full analysis of this guy and understand what he's going to do with it, because taking the discounts is a real viable option for this guy. It's going to add funds flow. And so it is something that's important to think about when you're analyzing this case, to think about, can I give some level of credit? Can I take this into consideration? Can I sell this? Is this real? Yeah.
Here's some, oh, go ahead, Stacey.
From my SEO, I know he said for a fact that the guy is on currently taking $18,000 of that. Why would we think he's even equipped with the people power to take that 165?
Why is he possibly equipped? What's been wrong in the past with how he's financed this company? He hadn't had any money.